19-year-old.
Modernism was
very glad to be in Los Angeles right now as an art maker, as an artist.
Thinking specifically of your practice, tell me how your conceptual frameworks have developed and maybe evolved or shifted during the time since you've left grad school. What are the...
First, see, again, right, this is interesting because in a way I don't think about those things that often. Oh man. You know, I would say that I am pretty, I find myself being really conceptually responsive. Yeah. That is how I would say that it has turned into something that is conceptually responsive. And from something that might have been, I don't want to say conceptually reactive, perhaps, but now I think it would, and I'm going to leave this really vague, I would say that it has turned, yes, conceptually responsive from conceptually, reactive and responsive, right, from conceptually reactive to conceptually responsive. You like that one, huh? That's a good one. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I think I do. I think what you're talking about is the level of confidence that you have in the...
Well, there is the level of confidence, but also I think my sources for those, for what I'm thinking about have changed and evolved a lot, and I think that is the other little nugget of what I'm saying. I will confess that I don't think I read as much as I used to. Well, I don't read the same things that I used to. I still read voraciously, but the things that I read that I think influence my practice have changed. So they used to be one way and now they are another way, which I think informs the work in the studio from the conceptually sort of reactive to the responsive. Well, there is always the sort of more academic texts, which I stopped reading in general, because I realized that half of that stuff not only did it not always interest me, it had no relevance to what I was really trying to talk about, right? They were such abstract concepts that while I could understand them and sometimes gain some things from them, it really had no sort of traction for the everyday issue. Well, not even just the everyday issues, just had no traction in the studio for me, just not interesting. So I started to read other things. And at the moment, the thing that I actually read the most is the newspaper. So every day, there is something about the tactile nature of that and the sort of, I'm really interested in the really expansive and broad scope of that all in one place. So I tend to get my ideas from there, and I collect the pictures. So I love the pictures that come from the newspaper every day, and I've made, it's my archive in a way. So my, the conceptual tenets of the practice in one respect come from those places, and it's about, I think that I'm interested in that form because it tends to be more about the people, right? Instead of some sort of higher sort of, I don't want to say higher academic thing, but just, it's kind of like a high and low sort of, I think of newspapers perhaps as low theory, but with a little bit of high theory thrown in there. So maybe it's middle theory, right? So it appeals to all of these ranges, and I can go in there and pick out what sort of works for me and sort of still keep my mind informed about sort of major things that are going on and minor things.
I think what you're saying really is a more general thing as well, that there was this sense that, had to be theoretically very. There was a kind of an intellectual sort of
Right.
seriousness and this theoretical.
Right, and I get that, and I totally understand that, but I just can't operate that way. That makes my brain hurt a lot, and it's not I don't think it's my job as an artist personally to sort of do that. It only hurts me when I hear people talk about other artists and they say they're so smart, and I go, when do I never get this so smart thing? But I don't know if it has a lot to do with that, but I think that there is some of that to do with it, that sort of other thing.
But I buy that
right.
myself.
I'm trying not to, but sometimes that sneaks back into the head. I just think that I have to, in that way when they say keep it real, I have to keep it sort of real to sort of my environment. And, I live in downtown Los Angeles. This is a very strange place with a massive homeless population. It's just weird. We've got only these strange buildings, the strange weather, the whole history of the city in general. So I can't sort of keep my nose in one of those academic terms. Treatises or books, I need to be really about, I'm more interested in just the real world and keeping myself sort of dirty in it.
Your work has a very strong
Smell?
And that's what
Sometimes, I mean, there is a strong tenet there is a thread through the work of things that smell, right? So I thought that would be good. There is, right? There is a whole a body of work that sticking stuff on the wall that actually is about smell. So I just gotcha. But it's true though, there is. Okay.
Where I was actually going with it, was it your work is very very aesthetically stimulating. It's very you work a lot
Visual.
with colour and texture and beads and surfaces and.
Right, I'm a firm believer in visual pleasure.
Yeah.
Really firm believer, which I think is another reason why some of those more dry academic texts sort of make me nuts. Right, I'm an artist, and so I think one of the first and most important jobs is to let someone have some of that visual pleasure, right? So first, my goal has always been to seduce visually first, right? And then after that, all the other stuff can start to come in. But at first, I have to catch your eye. And then I can perhaps start talking about things. And if you're willing to let me catch your eye, you might be willing to listen to me talk with you, not to you or at you, but hopefully with you about some things. And not everyone is able, again, or willing to do that, or go there if I suggest that or try to get them to go there, but at least I can try and sort of give them that visual pleasure, even if they're not willing to sort of go any further. My job, I think, is not done, but I'm satisfied that I was able to give that visual pleasure.
Is it a stereotype for me to say that that's a kind of a West Coast thing? Because I do seem to find more of that approach
Out here,
over
right?
in LA, yeah.
Right. That's a good question. Perhaps it could be. When you have sort of 6-8 months of 72-degree weather. I mean, it bores. I think, as I said, it gets really boring after a while. But I think it might be responsive to the environment. But I still know some people in New York who sort of can go and dip their toes into those waters. They tend to, and other places in the country, they don't tend to do it so much. But I think that might be an affect these days, right? And in the same way that perhaps your feelings about sort of this West Coast thing might be an affect. But I think, I think you're onto something. There is something to be said for that. But, there is still a lot of darkness here, right? So this sort of environment is very deceiving. So even, I would hope even within my own work and studio, right, and life, that all of that, it might just be surface. And that's fine too, that there is really something else lurking underneath all of that, but that's, again, up to the audience to sort of want to go to. I would put it out there for them, but you have to do some work too.
Mm. With those dark themes in your work, do you feel that you need to anyway draw the audience to that, or do you just kind of let people?
I let them do their own work. I am a firm believer in audience participation. Right, I try to put all of that stuff in there, and again, if they are willing and able to go there, then they can be rewarded, and if not, they, still get to look at something beautiful, hopefully, and question it. It might not be there, or it might, my dream has always been to have someone sit up in bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, oh, that's what I was looking at. That's what he's really talking about. That's what he's saying. After they, oh, it looks really beautiful. I really like it. It's nice, and and that's where they leave it, and then it sort of seeps into their subconscious that it's really about something else, and that's what interests me. That potential can happen in the work. That's kind of exciting.
In your studio practice, how important is the process of producing? Because a lot of your work is rather intensive, isn't it? It's very work intensive.
Right. Yeah.
How important is that manual process in the thinking of the work?
I would say it's super important. I never would have expected that I would be making such labor-intensive work. If you were to ask me this, many years ago, I never would have guessed that. Right. I thought that it would go, I would be able to make these things easier, and I find myself making and responding to more labor-intensive processes.
Yeah.
But even those get simplified often, and I think that helps me think through all of those things really well, and just think through what the work is doing, what I want it to do, what it can do, the potential of it, and also helps me figure out all the other stuff, right? Whatever else needs to go in there through that labor-intensive process and the just the time that it takes, even if it's not so labor-intensive, that things tend to go slow. And I'm a big editor. Right, I'm a massive editor in all respects, editor and distiller in the many ways that I think that those words could be used, and that process helps too.
Tell me a bit about that, because I think that is so important, that capacity to edit your work.
Right. Right. It sort of just comes naturally, I think. That makes me think of some of my students, and I would say, I think for me it comes naturally. I think some people have to really work on that, but I think I just want no bull. I won't swear, but I just don't need the superfluous things all the time, and I really want to be as direct and honest with the work, and to get there, in my practice, it means editing and distilling to try and not let the conversation get out of control in a way by someone else. So if I want you to go in this direction, I have to be really clear about what that direction is and how I got there, perhaps, and how to lead you there. And I think that happens through that process of distillation and editing. And I think that the forms that the work takes sort of also demand that that happens a lot too, whether it be sort of some beaded curtain or an object or a work on paper, something, whatever it is, they tend to continually demand the same thing, which I think is kind of interesting yet difficult when I always think I want to reinvent myself, but that things end up still looking like I made them.
One of the really interesting things about being in your particular studio, because when I go to different people's studios, you can see how, I mean, studios generally, in a very general way, look very similar. But when you see the different ways that people work in their practice, you get a real sense of how they themselves externalize their.
Oh, great! Right. So in this clutter, I can only imagine. Well, I'm sure what you can see first of all is that I really like blue. Right. Right. There's blue everywhere. Right. And now that I must be like scatterbrained, because that's what I think of when I come in here. Right. But I am always suspicious of really neat and ordered studios. Super suspicious. Even messy painters who have, you see those pictures and it's sort of this pristine studio. I go, that what's up with that? That raises a red flag.
Have you ever seen a photograph of Francis Bacon's studio?
Right. No, that is a studio. I don't know if I could let myself go there. I have some students who have studios like that, and perhaps because I'm getting older, I just don't even want to go in there half the time anymore. I'm like, I don't want this paint on me, and it tends to be painters, I've noticed, right? It goes back, perhaps again, to this whole romantic notion of what an artist is that is tied into modernism, right? Where they can really, like, when they want to push paint around, and right, they really, some of them turn into like Francis Bacon Juniors that way, and it's kind of. It's interesting. Right.
Because one of the things that I observe in your studio is, and you said when we arrived, that these things happen, but you do have, you appear to be working on many works, quite different works as well.
Right, and I don't know how I keep sane sometimes, but I do. Yeah, running around to thing, master of, what is it? What's that sort of cliche? Jack of all trades, master of none? Yeah. That's how I feel many times. Like, that to that. But again, I also think that if I think about it, I'm like, I can blame modernism for that too, right? And it's sort of a postmodernism too, and the idea of perhaps the pastiche of all of these things coming together in this to do something. Oh, I don't know. I'm feeling really kind of semi-smart today.